Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh, everyone. I hope you're all well, inshallah. Today I am so excited. I'm joined by a lovely sister based in New York City by the name of Aishah Alam. This sister is an author, a somatic therapist, and has a degree in Islamic studies, mashallah. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh, sister. I'm so happy you're here. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am good, alhamdulillah. How are you?
I'm good too, alhamdulillah. It's evening now here, so we're getting to the end of the day, which is quite nice. Sometimes when I start my day, sometimes I'm looking forward to the end to just relax.
I know, subhanAllah. So I would say, let me guess, it's like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is it 7 p.m. where you are?
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
SubhanAllah. I always forget because the Scottish accent is so different. Sorry. The Scottish accent is so different to the English accent.
Yeah.
But you are so like it's still close together, you know. And I sound proper ignorant just saying that all in itself.
No, it's
But
true. It is
yeah.
true. It's very different, and you can definitely tell the difference. Although a lot of people say to me that I sound Irish. I don't know where that comes from. Maybe it's just, I don't know. But yeah, I do get that quite a lot today. But we've got so much to talk about today, inshallah. Like I said, I'm excited for this episode. But before we get into all of that, I want to find out about, and I want everyone else to find out about you on a more personal level. So if you can introduce yourself in terms of, your upbringing in the UK and how you ended up in the US, that would be really good, inshallah.
Yes, of course. So I was born and raised in England. My mum is also born in England. She was raised in England. My dad was born in Kashmir, so he came over like when he was 3 years old. And so England is really all that I know. I was not as like the cultural aspect of Kashmir was from my grandma, and even that was like a broken kind of language that we communicated with. We're born and raised in Leeds. I don't know if you've heard of Leeds,
Yes.
but yeah, Leeds. So I don't have the Leeds accent so much, but I've got some of it. So born and raised in Leeds, and then when I was around 22 years old, we moved to America, New York, where my mum's side of the family lives. So that's basically just migrated completely. The whole family came, and it was a huge change. And I'm sure I'm going to get into a little bit later on as well. But there was a lot of like physical things that happened to me, just a lot of dysregulation emotionally. I got sick and all of these things, and all of those things led me to, subhanAllah, embracing Islam properly. So it's kind of like a hijrah, except it's in New York City, so I don't know if that counts. But yeah, that's basically like a little bit of the backdrop.
Okay, so you're a born Muslim, because sometimes I get quite a lot of reverts on, but you're a born Muslim, so that's quite good to know. Did you sort of so all your family came over here? Because I thought maybe you got married and moved over. So did you then get married after you moved, I'm assuming?
Yes. So we moved in 2011. I got married, I think, around 2017.
Right.
So a good while after. And yes, met my husband here. He's actually not from Kashmir. He's from Palestine. So it was very different to everything kind of just went outside of the, I guess, cultural norm so much. And so it was a new start in many ways.
Yeah. Well, that's such a great story. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give you success in your personal and your professional life. I've actually never been to the States. Again, it's somewhere that I want to go. I don't know. Sometimes I really want to go and see it. And then sometimes I'm like, I don't know how amazing it is. Is it maybe hyped up more than it is? But I have had family that have lived there in New York, in particular in the Manhattan area. And I've heard it's sort of similar to London in parts.
It is.
Yeah, so it's like very busy, very like lots going on. With today's show, the aim is to hopefully, inshallah, help Muslim women cultivate successful marriages. And this process doesn't begin with, just once the woman is married. It actually starts, before a woman gets married. You're talking about you got married in 2017, but a lot of the time, I got married not long after that. A lot of the time, you actually should be preparing for marriage before that even is a thing, I think, for women. But in your opinion, what should Muslim women look for when they're looking for a potential husband?
That's an amazing question. And a few years ago, my answer probably would have been very different before I got married. And this is probably before Islam as well. But the most important thing is of course, it's the predictable answer, which is the deen, making sure that he's on the deen, making sure his focus is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But one thing I don't think is spoken about enough, and I think is so important, is his willingness to grow as a person. And that is the ultimate kind of goal for two people coming together in a relationship. And relationships are one of the most difficult things I believe that we deal with, especially if you've been through childhood trauma, and then you meet this new person, and the last thing that you need is someone who is very stuck in a certain mindset and is unwilling to move forward and grow from it. And that is not to say that he might still be in a certain mindset, but if he's willing to expand and learn more, not just about the deen, which is so important and crucial for your connection, but also about self-help and healing and trauma and all of these things, and growing with you on a journey as well. Personally, that's something that is important to me, and I hope that it can resonate with our listeners as well, inshallah. And those are like the two main aspects, but of course there is the attraction, and that is including the connection as well, which isn't always something physical. It might be something that you are interested in talking about, and just making sure those three aspects are together, and hopefully we'll create a beautiful symphony with two amazing people, inshallah.
Inshallah. That's so interesting you say that, because it is something that that has come up and I've thought about, women, especially women that have been through childhood trauma. And I personally think that most people, I won't say all, but most people do go through some type of trauma during their childhood. I think especially in the Pakistani community, our parents back then didn't know much. Maybe we're trying to find their way in this world, in this land. And yeah, I think that most people do go through childhood trauma, but women sort of tend to want to heal from it, are aware of it, are wanting to talk about it, get it out. But men, I think, sometimes maybe don't want to, and think that it's not affected them growing up, or maybe double down. And I think that's a really interesting point, that we sort of both grow together and heal together, and not make the same mistakes that maybe our parents made, or maybe that have happened to us, and that doesn't affect our children. So it's really interesting that you say that. Of course, like you said, deen is the most important trait, but like also you said, that does not mean things like, a man's ability to provide and protect, as well as the looks and hygiene, all of that should be overlooked, because all of that's very important as well. And most Muslim men who are truly dedicated to Islam normally have those things in place. I actually had a brother on recently, and he said, which was something quite interesting, if a father is looking for potential husband for their daughter, that the father should attend masjid at Fajr time regularly, to see which young men are turning up to pray on a daily basis, and sort of make maybe a choice from there, which was really interesting. And I was like, actually, you know what, that makes sense. Like, why not? If they're that dedicated, then yes. So that was really interesting. And we touched on previously that through Somatic, you were talking about sort of yourself. How did you get into then Somatic therapy and helping Muslim women? How did that work, and what does that actually mean? Because a lot of people maybe haven't heard of that before.
Yes, of course. So somatic work is something that is more, it's very much connected to the body, and there's so many ways that is connected to the body, but the key thing to understand is that our body is an entity in itself in so many ways. It has symptoms sometimes, and there are feelings that we have, and it is all connected to the body, and a lot of it is related to our minds, and then there is the spiritual aspect, and everything is connected. And so the body, I want to kind of approach it from a Muslim perspective, Islamic perspective, because I remember one of my teachers, she was talking about the view of the body with traditional religions, and she specifically mentioned Islam. And I remember she was saying that the body is a sin, like it's a sin, like the feelings that you have is seen as a sin in Islam. And I wish that I had said something, but I didn't, because I wasn't at the live class. But I remember thinking, subhanAllah, if only she knew that our bodies are so profound that every morning our limbs wake up in the morning urging us to do good, right? And these are separate entities to our soul. Of course, you know, if you want to get technical, the body and the soul are connected. It makes the nafs, and then there's the ruh. But the body in itself is something Islamically which is honored, it's sacred, and that's why we cover up, that's why we treat it well. It's a gift, it's a trust, but it's also a witness, and that goes on to being a witness on the day of judgment, where it will be a witness for us or against us. Specifically, certain parts of our body are said to be speaking in Surah Fussilat, but then it's a witness for us here in this life as well, a witness to all of the pain that we've gone through, the things sometimes that we feel in our body are symptoms of something that we might have forgotten in our memory. Because a lot of the things which, for example, I'll give you a random example, my knee keeps hurting for some reason, and I can't remember ever hurting it before, but something might have happened to me when I was pre-verbal. I was a child, something, I fell down and it traumatized me in some way, and the pain is still there, but the memory is separate. So somatic work is really just about reconnecting to the body and also connecting to the mind as well, and kind of like integrating everything so you become more embodied in yourself. So everything you do is meaningful, everything you do is aligned with every single part of you. And then the other aspect to it as well is working with the nervous system, because the nervous system is one of the most primal parts of our human body, and also it's connected to the mind, it's connected to so many things. So what the nervous system does is it gets extremely dysregulated, meaning that you come into a survival response. So many of us, before we even, back to the question of marriage as well, so many of us may feel a certain way towards someone, and we may feel like, oh, butterflies and everything, but what it might be just dysregulation, right? So this person reminds me of something I remember so long ago, and I'm feeling this dysregulation inside of my body, and it's like, oh, is it love? But then is it anxiety? Is it fear? Is it all feels the same? And that's what somatic work is, just helping us to understand what am I feeling, why am I feeling like this, and how can I ground myself a little bit more so I can think more and connect with my true self. So that's basically that in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because even when you were talking about marriage, that sometimes, I don't know if you've heard people say that men get married to their mother and women get married to their father, but they don't realize it, because a lot of the time people go, no, I didn't, and you're like, actually, maybe you can't see it. Because, you know, like you said, the butterflies, that's what you think, but actually maybe it's just similarities or something you're used to, or habits that you're used to seeing, and that just sort of makes you feel like, oh, I know this and I recognize this, and that makes you feel like part of, you know, someone, or being loved and things like that. So yeah, it's really interesting that, and it's also interesting how much people are not aware of their behaviors, their habits, their way of thinking, how much they actually can control these things. A lot of people think that it's out of their control and that they can't change the way they think or change their behavior or their habits. It's just the way that they are, or, you know, I just need this medication to keep going. I can't stop taking it, because if I stop taking it, I will be in pain. But actually, you know, why don't you try different things? Try healing yourself. Maybe it's more mentally rather than, you know, medication. And there's so many people that are struggling. So it's amazing work that you're doing, sister. It really is. But I want to sort of touch on what we were talking about previously about, you know, women preparing for marriage before maybe even looking for marriage. And let's be honest, as women, we do need to prepare ourselves for marriage, you know, in regards to the responsibilities we all have towards our husbands and our children. And I think sometimes in the society that we live in, and I hear about it all the time, you know, from friends, family, girls that are not married, and they're just looking for that, what do they call it? Prince Charming. And I hate it. I hate that word.
I know. I totally get that.
You know, and you just like, that's all they want. And they just want that. And sometimes they want a man to just fix everything for them. You know, maybe they're coming from, like we said, childhood trauma, difficulties, and they think that a man will fix everything, and not actually realizing what their role will be in marriage, and how much actually they're the ones that will fix everything, and they're the ones that the men will depend on.
Yep.
So what do you think Muslim women should have in place before they get married, and how can we prepare our women for marriage?
That's an amazing question. I think I touched on it a little bit just as we were speaking as well. It's really just making sure that you are in a place of security. And when I say security, I mean safety, but not in a way that is always financial, and things like such as materialistic things, which are important. It's so important. But the first port of call for any woman, whether you have money or you don't have money, is having that sense of security within yourself. So finding safety inside of your own body, and being kind of conscious of your own behavioral patterns, your weaknesses, and that is really going to dictate the kind of person you are attracted to, and if it truly is attraction, or whether it is something that is something called limerence, which I'm going to be releasing a video about this on my YouTube YouTube channel, inshallah, in the next few weeks. But there's this thing that we go through, which is love addiction, and again, it comes from those childhood wounds, and it's not love so much, and it's that feeling of hopefully they'll save me. It's basically like a fantasy, right? And the unfortunate thing is, like, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in a short while, but when couples get married, that's the number one thing, this limerence, this obsession, this fantasy that we create inside of our mind about the other person or another person other than our spouse, is breaking up so many marriages, Muslim and non-Muslim as well. So a beautiful thing to do before we even step into that sacred bond and relationship with whoever we choose, who is good for us, inshallah, it's important to recognize, am I obsessing about this person in a way that I'm not able to communicate with my true self? Like, am I completely blinded by all of the emotions and the butterflies and the anxiety, and going against what so much of the popular norm and culture is, like the music and the movies and the princesses and the industry, which is really a marketing gimmick so much? That's not what love is. And once we realize that that isn't the feeling you're chasing when you meet somebody, then what it does, it opens you up to really seeing things as they are. So you see a person who comes and you're like, okay, they're not literally sweeping me off my feet the way I thought I would be, that fantasy. But there's something there, there's something that I feel closer to Allah when I'm talking to them. There's something I'm excited about, and there's something which is sobering almost as well. And that's a pretty good message that, you should maybe go for it, because you want to be with someone who you can think clearly with. And that is why it's important to do that. But when we don't do that, and then we go with the feelings, only the feelings are important, but when we only go with the feelings and the emotions, that's where the narcissistic and the codependent relationships come forth. And I know that's such a word that is thrown about so often, but it's so important as well, because it opens us up to many dangers. And what those dangers do is they impact the coming legacy, who are our children, and really it is all about them. For me, in my opinion, the most important thing that is produced from a husband and a wife is the love between them, but it's the legacy that they produce together, and they continue that for generations. And if that's a legacy of trauma because of what attracted you both in the first place, was based on the wounds rather than the healing part of you, right? The whole part of you, the spiritual part of you, the abundant part of you, that basically is something that it can really impact so much more than just those two who are in that relationship as well.
Yeah, that's so true. And it makes me think of, how much work that people actually have to do on themselves before, they get married, and how, really you need to make yourself whole. A broken person and a broken person cannot make a whole. You need to have two wholes to make a whole. And it's really important that people do that work, before they do get married. And I want to talk a bit about, if people do get married and then have the realization that, okay, maybe I am in in a relationship that was based on feelings, or maybe I have a lot of trauma. I do want to get into that, and how maybe people can heal from that and heal together. But what I wanted to sort of say on this subject about women preparing for marriage, and one of the other things that I think a lot of women Maybe, I don't know if they're reluctant, maybe it's the feminism in this day and age, but not realizing that running the household in regards to, you know, cooking, making sure your home is organized and tidy is very important for a woman to do, expecting, you know, men to do equal amounts, if not more. Is sometimes unrealistic, especially, you know, in the early stages when you have children, you're on maternity leave, if you do get that, you know, you have that time free. But it's equally, what's an important thing is the woman's mood in the house. And, you know, a woman dictates the weather in the home, you know, and it is spoken about a lot in Islam that if a woman is feeling negative or feeling under pressure, that it's and that is manifesting itself and how she communicates or acts, it throws everyone off. You know, for men, they can sort of switch off and seclude themselves and get on with their work. But as women, you know, we're highly intuitive, we're emotional beings, and being able to navigate, you know, positive and negative thoughts and feelings is such an essential part of the household, especially, like you said, if your legacy, if you've got children in the house. Of course, a man's mood can also have a major effect on a home environment. I've seen men that are, you know, come home very angry, very not wanting to, you know, engage in the children, engage in the family, and that can throw off the house as well. But men are very black and white compared to us women. We go through, I think throughout the month, we go through like this massive roller coaster.
We do.
Most women do. And even sometimes as a woman, you don't even know what's happening to your body or why you're thinking a certain way. And I think sometimes it's very important, if a woman is in a negative place, she is depressed or she is sad, it's important to look at not, oh my God, she's just always angry, she's always depressed, but why is she like that? What is the reason behind it? Maybe she doesn't even know herself. You know, maybe she's just going through something that she's not aware of. Yeah, but our roles should, I think, complement each other, not be competitive. You know, even if conflicts arise, solutions should be the main priority. But what I wanted to ask you was, what could, you know, both a husband and a wife do to lay the foundations of a harmonious Islamic marriage and home life? You know, what should the early stages of marriage before kids be to get that harmony?
That's a really good question. I think the most important thing is communication, of course, and just being very transparent with each other and not telling the other person what you think they want to hear. I know so many people who have fallen into the trap of, you know, they are swept away, they are excited, they are, you know, really hoping for the best in the future, and at that time they might even believe it, but they'll say things and they'll give these promises like, I'm going to make you, I don't know, I'm going to make you fried eggs every morning for the next 50 years.
That would be nice.
with a heart on it and with some hot sauce or something, I don't know. But something, they'll give a promise, and it's really sweet because it's romantic and you're swept away in the beginning. But that's a really minor example of sometimes these expectations which we are promised in the beginning, and then we think it's going to be like that for the rest of the time, because a honeymoon period, it will go. The excited feelings, that first stage of love, it will go as well. And I really think that a beautiful thing just to keep in mind is that you want to be in a place where you do have that harmony within the relationship, and that comes through clearly communicating who you are as a person, what your needs are and what your expectations are, so the other person is fully aware, rather than thinking, and this isn't by any means something that is blameworthy upon any of them, because we all want to be better people and we hope to be like that one day, but sometimes we might over promise and over kind of like give in the beginning, and then that expectation is set, and then it just really builds up disappointment. So really just being authentic. And a lot of the time, some people will say, well, that doesn't work for me. And it doesn't have to be anything that is like a real deal breaker. It could be something as simple like, you know, I want to be the only wife in the marriage. Just saying it clearly like that. Another woman just does not work for me. And the man, he's like, okay, that doesn't work for me, and that's fine. So you go, you do your thing, I do my thing, and there's no blame on any of them. There's just this transparency, a little bit of disappointment, but it takes away from a lifetime of disappointment. So really having those needs clear, your values clear, and your non-negotiables before the marriage even begins, and then communicating that with each other transparently, and compassionately as well, without this air of kind of like, well, it's my right and I want it like this. Instead, just like, be compassionate, but also being firm, which I'm actually going to be talking a little bit about in some of the other questions, inshallah. But yeah, does that answer your question?
No, it definitely does. And I think I like that you say that, because a lot of the time, when you originally get married, you do show the best version of yourself. You are in that sort of phase of like the first year. It's all like everything's like you said, butterflies, and everything is exciting, and everybody does. And as a woman, you want to give your husband everything, and you want to, do what he needs and give him everything that he needs and do all the cooking and the cleaning and everything. And then obviously when children come, a woman splits, doesn't she? And if another child comes, then she has to third herself, and she can't give everything. And for a woman, that's actually, a lot of the time we are shocked by that. How can we still maintain what we originally did, or the way that we originally were, and now have to give to two other human beings who can't do anything for themselves? And I think sometimes a lot of the harmony goes when that happens.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of the time men are like, what's happened to her? One minute she was like giving me everything, and now she doesn't even want to like get me a glass of water. Like, what's happened? What do you think about, men and women, how can they stay in harmony after children? When that honeymoon period does go, okay, we have our needs, this is what I need. Because sometimes women's needs change after having kids too.
Absolutely, they do.
Before kids, you get all the time in the world to do what you want. After kids, you've got no time. So how can we keep that up?
So it has to be intentional. And it's so easy, because I see it was happening with my own marriage, with my own children. We had the children, everything was busy. It was always changing the diapers, getting them ready, always on the go, appointments, going here, going there. And there was barely any time to relax. And then we got to a point where there was this realization, like, I actually enjoy being around you. So how about we do something about that? And subhanAllah, I remember, I think it took years for us even just to go on a date, my husband and I, when the children were already born. And that day we went on a date. We were in Philadelphia. I was at my sister's, and my mom was there as well. And I asked them, I said, can you just take care of the baby? Please just take care of the baby just for like an hour. I want to go on a date with my husband. So we ended up going to a cafe. And they were doing, and we were like sitting down and we were talking. And then in through the door comes my mum, my sister, and my baby. And I'm like, okay, so I guess just that didn't work, did it? So, but we had 15 minutes.
Okay.
It was good, right? But then later we realized we really have to be more intentional about this, and just something small, like during that time, just something so small as reading a book together. I know it sounds nerdy to some people. I am a nerd. I like reading books and writing books. I love doing that stuff. But it just reading a book sometimes, playing a game, and all it takes is 5 to 10 minutes, and just talking to each other just briefly, and holding that time together as well as something that's truly sacred. And those 5 and 10 minutes are so profound in the grand scheme of things, because you will get your time back, inshallah. When the children grow a little bit older, you'll get a little bit more time off. That time will come, and that literally, even if it's just a thread that held you both together, it was strong enough to pull you through. And that's what you want to keep there as well. So always remember that as well. No effort is too small, inshallah, unless there's no effort at all, of course, right?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I've seen a lot of marriages where there is no effort, and the people break down. And I've got, friends of the family, the marriage is completely broken down after kids. Their kids are older now and they don't speak. They live in the same house. They're together for their kids. They don't speak. Their kids are older, getting on with their own lives. And the marriage is in such turmoil for so long that it's fallen apart. So it is important that, yes, I think a lot of people think, well, we're in this phase of we've got kids, we'll get out of this phase, but it's still important to work on the marriage during that time. Like you said, even if it's tiny little things, even if you're just having dinner at home, but without the children when they're asleep, you know, just together.
That's a date. Yeah.
Yeah, just a dinner day at home, you know.
You were
it's
so
just
excited about it before. Do you remember just like the getting to know each other phase? That was like
yeah,
everything.
yeah,
We're alone, you know? So yeah, that's a
yeah.
date. Yeah.
Yeah, and you want those butterflies again. And I think a lot of the time people
Yeah.
say that, you know, honeymoon phase comes and it goes and that's it done. But I don't understand why that can't stay, why you can't work on that
Yeah.
to bring that together. And I actually saw a podcast and someone was saying that, yes, love and caring for each other and all that stuff is important. But what's really important in a marriage is peace, having that peace
Yeah.
with each other,
Yeah.
you know, even if
Mhm.
the love might die sometimes, caring for each other might, but as long as you're still at peace with each other,
Yeah.
that's what's the most important. So inshallah, that will help a lot of people.
Well, and I also just want to also note
Yeah,
that
please.
we're biologically created to fall in love again and again and again. And it can be with the same person. So as you're growing, that's why I began with saying the first thing that is the most important for me with the deen as well is the willingness to grow.
Yeah.
And when you have that willingness to grow, what happens is you become a brand new person, probably every year, every few years. But what that does is you get to know each other as these new people with these new interests and these new intrigues. And you mentioned something so amazing, how even when after you have a baby, there's certain things that you change in your tastes, and there's a biological reason for that as well. Your body goes through a completely different process. You're literally like a new person after you have a baby. So again, there's the opportunity to fall in love again and just keep falling in love. And you can have those butterflies. It might not be as like, you know, as amazing as you remember it in the beginning, but it's deeper and it's more longer lasting. Allahumma barik. And there's a look that they'll give you of love. Like you can see like there's true love there, instead of just like that kind of like attraction, kind of like winking kind of feeling, you know? So yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely possible to continue that.
Okay, that's really nice. Inshallah, that will help other people. I think Islamically, one thing that, you know, when you go, a lot of people say, well, go to the Quran, you know, to learn about how to be in a marriage. And one of the main things is a husband and wife, you know, we've been assigned roles that complement our respective biologies and psychologies, you know, as men and women. Men are leaders, providers, and protectors of the household. Women ensure the household runs properly. You know, women are responsible for maintaining a man and a child, and you know, so much so that they're able to function at their full potential. And a man, you know, may lead by example when it comes to showing children the practice of Islam, but women are so important in teaching them the intricacies and the fundamentals of the religion. And I think that's why it's really important to know your deen, or to at least start learning your deen when you have children, because you need to put that into them. A lot of the time, you know, from our generation, my parents and people that I know, they knew how to tick the boxes of, you know, reading your Salah and reading the Quran, but they didn't know what the Quran said. They didn't know what they were reading in their Salah. You know, they were just ticking the boxes, and it's so much more important to know about your actual Islam, your religion. And a lot of the other roles that a man takes in the household is making final decisions, you know, because of his gift of logic. And a woman ensures, you know, his peace of mind through the gift of intuition. But we're all human, we all make mistakes, no one's perfect. So, you know, everybody has bad days, and it's good to balance each other. And it's good for a woman to go, do you know what? Yes, you make the decision, but this is my opinion. This is what I think. Maybe this might not, and it's good to work together, you know, and there might be, like we said, couples that are going through hardships for many reasons, where their marriage is going through a rough patch. They still want to work it out. They don't want to split up. They've got children, or, you know, they really want to get those butterflies back. Do you think a Muslim wife or even a Muslim husband can rescue a marriage that is in turmoil? Do you think it takes one? I think I know the answer to that. Or does it need to be both? And if so, how could someone bring back their marriage back to life?
Yes, so I actually had I had this something inside of my I remember you sent me some of these questions as well, and I'm trying to pop it up right now. I apologize, I am not
No, take your time.
I'm paying attention. Yes, yes, so it really comes to something that we've spoken about from the beginning, and as you can see, it's like a common thread that goes on. If there's like a turmoil in the marriage, And if it is not a marriage where the husband or the wife, honestly, it could be both of them, have a personality disorder of some kind, which is very difficult to work with, may Allah make it easy for all of those who are in these situations, because they're much more common than we realize, Muslim and non-Muslim communities. But if it's not something like that, then it is something that can be worked through. It is something that both of parties can work together as well. And what that necessitates, and this is also in Islam as well, is that both of them have the intention of working through it. Because sometimes there'll just be one of the parties and they've given up, and then there'll be another one who is really wanting to work together, and it never works because you need two people to work together in order to work through problems. And if it is a kind of thing where one person is being blamed and, guilt tripped and gaslit and all of these things, again, it really does take going deeper into it. And I also want to say that there is such thing as certain behaviors that we have in our marriages, which are really coping mechanisms for us to feel seen, to feel important, to feel all the things that we feel we're supposed to in a marriage. And that might lead to us acting in ways that are out of our own integrity. We might do things which hurt the other person. We might do things to force the other person to think the way we do. It could be through crying and crying and crying and hoping that they'll feel sorry for you, or a form of trying to get what you want, but in a more kind of underhand way. And this doesn't mean that the people who are doing these things are bad people. It just means that that's what they've been taught, and that's what succeeded for them in the past. And it's time, most of the time, the turmoils that happen inside of marriages is because of these coping mechanisms that the individual has not worked through. And when both individuals have these traumas and these wounds from the past, and they are coping in a way which is hurting the other person, it can really be a painful thing to work through, but it is something that can be worked through as long as both parties are intentional about it and they have that growth mindset. And I don't like using the word growth mindset so much. It's the willingness to grow, right? I think it's been overdone. But yeah, I think as long as they both had the intention, then Bismillah, Allah will intercede Himself to make sure that it happens, inshallah. And just remember that whenever you are trying to do something good, and whenever you are on the side of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, only good will ever come. And it might not be in the way that you anticipated. It might be painful, but ultimately it is something good that you will look upon, inshallah, if the wisdom is given to you, in hindsight, that, this was necessary and this was painful, but it was important for me, for who I've become today.
Yeah, and I think that's another important thing as well when we're, praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you're, when you're going through difficult times, as a couple, that you're both praying for, the betterment of that. If one of you is just praying and the other one isn't, that's a big tell of how much does that person really care about the marriage? Are they even noticing that there's something wrong? That's a big thing that sometimes people don't know that there's even anything wrong in their marriage, and they're just going about their daily life, assuming everything is fine. What do you think about marriage counselling and counselling for Muslim couples? Because a lot of the time we don't have many Islamic, there's not as much as there is non-Islamic counselling for married couples. And I think there's a difference between going to someone that is from a Muslim background to someone that's from a non-Muslim background when you're going into marriage counselling. Like we said, feminism and all this stuff is so big. So what is your thoughts on marriage counselling specifically?
I think marriage counseling is amazing, mashallah. But I also think that it's important that you are with someone who is counseling you and who knows the deen, and someone who understands the values as well that you have as a Muslim couple. There's some amazing, resources out there. The Gottman Institute. In fact, I'm part of something called Heal Therapy Clinic, which is for women, Muslim women and women, whatever faith you are. And specifically, it's focused on relationships. So there's also group and couple counseling as well, which is available there as well. So there are many resources, and there are some which are very inexpensive. But it really is. And I know that there's this thing where you go to the imam and you can speak to him, you can get counseling, and that is totally up to you if you feel that you trust the imam. But counseling doesn't necessarily only have to be with someone who is professional. It can also be with yourself and your spouse. You can co-counsel each other, and there is a way that you do that. There's these guidelines how to do that by Pete Walker, who wrote a book called Complex PTSD, From Surviving to Thriving, where the couple can come together and they can actually counsel each other by active listening, and replying, and really affirming and validating and sharing as well, and both feeling like they're being seen as well. So that's a more affordable option, which I believe is such a powerful connector to both of you as well. So there are so many options. And I just also want to note that whoever you choose to enter inside of your sacred space, make sure that it's someone who you trust with all of your body, right? We tend to invite people into our home and our space, and sometimes it's just to talk to them because we feel, I'm supposed to trust you. You're supposed to be this person who's close to me. And what they end up doing is, for their own reasons, causing much more destruction and egging you on into this conflict. And it's not about peace. It's just about drama. And it's a very difficult situation when you have someone counseling you who you don't fully trust as well. So just make sure it's someone who is trustworthy, and just because of their role in your life as maybe a sibling or a parent doesn't necessitate them being a part of counseling your marriage. They might have had their own issues, and everyone is good at something, and they might not necessarily be good at that. So just make sure you choose wisely who you enter into your space, because it's so important.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that one, because a lot of the time we do find, if a mother-in-law, we'll get into this, is difficult, or if a husband is difficult, or if the wife is difficult, or if the other side, and then we'll go and complain to other people. And like you said, that a lot of the time you might forget what you even complained about, but they will never forget. And they will always hold that against you, and they will hold that against the person that you were talking about. And that will actually cause more damage to your relationship, because you weren't being trustworthy. And sometimes people don't even know that you've spoken to someone, and it might come out in a bad way. So definitely, I agree, be very careful and mindful about who you talk to. We've spoken about, the Islamic roles of a husband and wife in a hypothetical manner. On a human level, these religious guidelines, are what we're all trying to live up to the best of our abilities. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us, success in our marriages. However, I feel now, sort of talking more about an individual level, in order for a marriage to flourish, we have to be secure as individuals also. We've touched a bit about this before, before getting married, working on yourself. But also when you're in a marriage as well, one person's happiness and peace of mind can't totally be dependent on another person. And you've talked about this, codependency, and that's sometimes happening when you've not chosen the right person, but chosen a person for the wrong reasons. Of course, when you're married, that does happen to a degree. You do lean on each other a lot more. And when you don't have people to talk to, or you don't have someone to trust to talk to, you will then just spout a lot more onto the only person that you can trust, or the only person that is there for you. So as individuals, working on our physical health, our mental health, and most importantly, our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is so important. As individuals, you'll bring much more to the table if you're working on all these things. And collectively, as a couple, it'll make you stronger as well. You have to know that you're your own person, they're their own person, you have your own struggles, your own traumas. I personally had a lot of struggles with postnatal depression for quite a long time. My girls were, I had one, my eldest, and then I fell pregnant 7 months later after she was born. Then I had another one. So I don't think I ever really healed the first time before going into pregnancy again, and then having another one, and then all of a sudden having two babies. And I was like, oh my God, what? It's almost like having twins, but going through two pregnancies.
It is.
So it was really difficult at that. It took me years to get over, and subhanAllah, Islam has helped me overcome that. But it also took effort from me actively, to really think about, okay, I can't just, I have to spend that time for myself. And like we talked about, when women have children, all of a sudden your time is taken from you. And then but I had to change my thinking, what I was eating, exercise, try and create a positive network of people, look at who was in my life. They say that the 5 people that are in your life the most actually affect you.
Yeah, you're right.
Really important. And it was important to have gratitude as well for the things that I do have, and things. So, Hannah, I have children. There are so many people that don't have children, and rather thinking about things that we don't have. So I relate to women who are having a difficult time mentally after having, multiple kids, and that might not have family to help them. Some people don't have the village that everybody talks about.
No, they don't. They absolutely don't. You're right.
It's really difficult. So how do you think Muslim mothers that are struggling with motherhood, how can they deal with the pressures of having children and realize that switch that happens?
Subhanallah, as you were speaking, I could relate so deeply. Like, subhanallah, you spoke about having your one child and then having another child 7 months. I had something similar, same time frame, same children, 2 girls. And what happened was, subhanallah, what happened was around that time, I remember doing things that I was unaware of that I was doing. Like, I wouldn't even remember putting my baby back inside of a bed. And I would go back into my bed. I remember waking up, I'm like,
yes,
I've lost time. What happened?
Yes.
And
I've been worried, like panicking. Of like, how did you get in there, or how did you get next?
Yes. And it makes you feel like, what's going on with me?
Yeah.
I remember just like having these feelings, like literally I felt like my sense of self was just so shaking. And it was actually, subhanallah, through having my children that I realized how much trauma I still had inside of my body, and how many things. That's actually what made me go through this path that I've chosen in my life as well. But just going back to that, it's so hard. It really is hard, especially when you don't have a village around you. And just being in America, we didn't have that community as much. It was difficult. Like, it's a very individualist society. Our grandparents and our mothers, there's less kind of like it used to be before. You would just be able to leave your child and all the kids would be running. And there are parts where it is like that, but for a lot of women, we don't have that resource. We have the masjid, we have the community, and that's the closest thing we can have, which I would definitely highly recommend for you to go to as well. But at the same time, it's a very real struggle. And that, subhanAllah, during that time, I'll just speaking about my own experience, is that I remember my daughter was 4 months old, my first, and I remember opening up my laptop. It sounds so dramatic. And I would wait for her to go to sleep. And I remember just looking forward to a cup of tea, just that 40 minutes or 1 hour, just a cup of tea. Yes. And I would be on the computer and I would be looking up just how to write a novel. I know, so random. So and I started looking it up, and I got excited about it. I really didn't take much of the information back with me, even till now. I got some of it, but most of it was just the excitement. I have a story that I want to tell. So I started just writing, and that got me through this time. It was basically a form of expression. It was a form of something that was for myself, something I was also creating. But then at the same time, I did it at the time which was convenient for me with my daughter. She was there when she was awake, then she would just be running around. I'd be playing with her, and then I'd go back to writing. It gave me something to look forward to, and slowly it really did feel like the darkness was lifting slowly. And at this time, it was I got pregnant again. She was around 6-7 months around the time. I remember looking at her and thinking, oh, I'm pregnant again. And just looking at her face, just like looking nonchalant and thinking, how am I going to do this? And then my second daughter, she was born during COVID, like literally as soon as the lockdown came. She was born that May. And subhanAllah. So I would say, pay attention to what you are feeling. It is important because your body is always telling you something. And a lot of the time we feel that it's because of this stage after our pregnancy. It's, you're going through a kind of depression. That's very real. But then a lot of the time it's because when we were children, the things that we went through, a lot of those instances are being relived through us as our children are reaching those stages. We might not even remember. So for example, when I was a baby, I was extremely highly sensitive. I was always screaming. I was always crying. I was clingy. I had really bad attachment issues as a baby, right? And then when my baby was born, the same things were playing over and over again. And then at another stage, some issue came, and another stage, some issue came. And it was like every stage of this healing that I was Allah, honestly, it's Allah guiding me through. I felt like He was guiding me through this. It was a message like, now it's time to focus on this thing when you are this age, and this thing when you are this age. And it really is almost like an awakening. And I also want to speak to sisters who I feel, you know, they've gone through this, they've gone through depression. It was hard for them to connect with their children. There's this guilt that we feel that did I mess my children up? Let's be completely blunt about it. Did I mess my children up because I was unable to focus and pay attention and do all the things everyone's saying? Look at them in the eye, hold them close, and be with them 24/7, and not let them cry it out. And all of these new researchers are coming. And I just want to speak to that, saying that it's normal to feel guilt about that, but you being someone who is trying to change and grow and heal, and the things that you're doing is a testament to how your children can also grow and heal. So you've not messed them up. It's never too late to reattach with them and build that connection with them, even if it's just more eye contact as well. And it can be saved. It can be. And subhanAllah, so there's always hope. I do believe that as long as we're alive is a day that there is hope, and you can pull through it, even if it feels like at that time you can't. And just hold on to one small thing. If you can't see anything else, one small thing that you remember that made you feel happy just for a moment. And for me, that was my writing, and that's something that I think everyone has their own version of. So
SubhanAllah. That's beautiful to hear, and I'm so glad that I'm not glad that you went through that, but it's nice to know that you're not. Sometimes when that happens, we become so isolated as women, and we don't discuss. Really do. You put on that face, you go to places. I remember going to like my kids' classes and being so unhappy and so depressed, but everybody just praising how good the children looked and how well I looked, and I was just like, you've got no idea what's going on, and you just and it's important to talk about these things. One thing I just wanted to quickly ask is, what would you say to the men that have wives that are going through that, just so that they can, there's many men that have got no idea what to do when their wives are like in that stage?
Again, from my example, so my husband, he took a very active role in taking care of our children. He was changing the diapers, he was doing everything, he was feeding them. So husbands, let your wife sleep. Sleep is so healing. And just take over for just maybe an hour or two, inshallah, and just do something small that you can allow her to have some space for herself. And space is so healing. And sometimes that's all she needs to just get through the next stage of the day, and then the next day, and then it gets easier, and then she gets to be more independent. It's almost like rebirthing and regrowing yourself as a woman as well. And that's where the husband, the whole kind of masculinity and the providing, it has to kind of come down just a little bit, and then just meet her with compassion. And that compassion can build such love between you after the stage of the baby, and that's that thread is going to be the thing which connects you both, and that's going to be something that you're always going to be thankful for, inshallah.
I mean, the responsibility on women after having kids is so vast and important. Your children depend on their mothers for survival, and it's the biggest sacrifice any woman will ever have to make. You're not only in charge of keeping the child alive, but also making sure, psychologically they're flourishing and healthy, and that does mean, prioritizing their needs before your own. And they're very vulnerable, and even when you don't feel your best, you don't look your best, you have to show up. It's a 24/7 job. I don't care what anyone says. It is a full-time. It's not a full-time job. It's 24/7.
It is
7 days a week. For the rest of their lives. But that bond between mother and child, it's the strongest bond there is. It's the same for every species in nature. That's why mothers are so highly honored and respected in Islam, because they have such a big role. But speaking of mothers, I'm changing course a little bit here. Men also love their mums.
Of course. Yeah.
As they should. We've both got girls, so we've not, not yet, inshallah, maybe someday
Yeah.
we will feel that bond with a son. But we do have husbands, and men do love their mums. However, unfortunately, sometimes they can lead to disputes between spouses and in-laws, and we see that so much. What do you think is the best way for a Muslim wife to deal with her in-laws, particularly a mother-in-law, especially if the relationship maybe isn't the best?
Yeah, it's a very real question you're asking.
Yes.
Very real. It's so true. So and subhanallah, mothers even in Disney movies, they're seen as this awful stepmother kind of thing,
Yes.
right? And I think it's an important question because it's, like I said, it's very real. And this is where the values come back. Now, doing a value inventory isn't just something you do before marriage. It's something that you do on a continuous basis. Every year, you kind of reassess. And I don't want to make it too technical, but just ask yourself questions like, what's important to me right now? What is something that I want to prioritize in my children's life, and what in my life? That thing might be something like, I want them to have a close connection to their grandparents because I never had one to my grandparents, or I did have one and I found such value in it. So just think about what is your important to you to prioritize. And even that could be anything. It could be, I want to please Allah, number one. Number two, it might be, I want to make sure that my spouse is in a good place. I mean, when everyone is in harmony, our spouse feels amazing, right? Both ways.
Yes.
I want to make sure my children have a connection to their grandparents, and you can fill in all the things, right? And then just keep in mind that that is the most important thing. That is the goal. So every single thing that happens within that goal that you're trying to achieve, in a way, really is strategic, right? You have to be strategic about this. You can't be emotional, even though it's so difficult not to be. Feel your emotions in private and express them to Allah and to a trusted one as well, inshallah. Even if it might not be your spouse, but make sure you are aware of them yourself instead of suppressing them. I know I've had a habit of doing that so much in the past. So just express like, I don't feel good, so go to the event. For example, I'll just give you like a talk, like a very kind of detailed thing is, just go to the event, you see the grandparents, and then you are civil, and you are boundaried, and you are also compassionate. And this really brings me to I want to bring in a little bit of somatic work as well here as well. So our bodies at the front, we have a softness, right? Our front is soft. I mean, women and men, we have a softness, right? Unless you're completely brolic. But then our back is something that is of strength. Our spine holds us up. It's a thing which really holds the rest of our body up. Now, if you imagine that your front is the thing which we show to the world, is your compassion, it's your dignity, it's your kindness, right? But that back is the thing which allows you to give in a way that you are able to. You are boundaried. You know that if they say something that is disrespectful, you're not going to shout at them. You're going to be compassionate and then excuse yourself and stay away as long as you need to regulate yourself. And that doesn't mean you just keep showing up even though you're feeling a certain way. There have been people in my own family who I've had to take a step away from for a few months, a long time. And when I go back, the relationship dynamic is completely different. And it wasn't to show them anything. It was because I needed to be in a regulated space myself. I knew I wasn't thinking clearly, and my mind was really ruminating and going into depression, and it was coming out on my children. And I thought, no, I have to have a firm back right now and put my boundaries in a compassionate way. And then just really studying your capacity. So then that's the third part of this. The first is compassion. The front is always compassion. Even like Ibrahim alayhi salam did with his own dad, he was compassionate with him. But there's a strength there that you know your boundaries, you know what your limits are. And then there's a capacity, which is basically, if you imagine it like your windpipe, you're breathing in. how deep is your breath? Is it from the belly? Is it just from the chest? If you're breathing shallow around someone, that's telling you that you feel almost like you're being suffocated. It tells you that you need some space and you need to regroup yourself. And now that constriction inside of your body is telling you it's time to step back a little bit. However you want, just do what you need to, and then go back, remembering what your ultimate value is. And that's going to look very different for many people. That might be seeing your parents or your in-laws once a month. It might be every few months. It might be something else. But you do ultimately what is good and pleasing to Allah, but also what is good and pleasing to you in a way that does not break you. We women are very powerful, but we are also compared to the rib, and if you pull us too hard, we will break. No matter how much we love our spouse, we should not have to break for anyone, right? And subhanallah, so just keeping those important things in mind as well, and just constantly just checking in, just constantly check into yourself. And especially if you've been through a family holiday, which you will go through quite often with the mother-in-law and the in-laws, and there's that, it normally happens through passive aggression. Like, it's normally passive aggressive because normally the in-laws don't want the husband to know what's happening. So you look like the crazy one. I get it. It's so predominant in so many cultures as well. So that's when you just decide, like, okay, I have to be extra self-care-ish to myself, that whatever that looks like for you, because self-care looks different for people. That might mean, for me, for example, is I need to be off my phone for 3 or 4 days. I don't make that plan. I just go through every day and I'm like, I can't communicate with people because I need to withdraw, because I've just had a really overwhelming experience with this person, with these people, and now I just need that time to regroup myself, to come back to safety, and then I'll be ready to go back. And then when the constriction kind of goes, that kind of freeze almost, when that constriction goes, you can breathe more easily. It's like, okay, now I'm okay, right? So then it really is just there's not really one answer. It's just what really fits you, what your capacity is, and what you are capable of doing. But the most important thing through all of it is make sure that you are regulated physically, and you are also paying attention to how you feel during that time and after, and you are meeting those physical needs for yourself and not expecting your husband or anyone else to do it, because that's your role. And if that means you take away some time from him in the morning with that omelette and you know, that heart on the egg kind of thing, and you're reading Qur'an instead, or you're doing a workout because you're kind of energizing yourself, then so be it, you know, because you'll come back better and you'll come back stronger. But that is going to break you, inshallah. So
yeah, it's definitely a tricky situation to be in, especially if, you know, a woman feels like her mother-in-law is treating her unfairly, especially if you live with in-laws. I know in our culture, a lot of that does happen when you're living with in-laws. It can be really difficult. But like you were saying, you know, having that compassion, that patience, you know, insulting a man's mother is just off limits. You know, it's not something that you should do. He won't thank you for it. She won't thank you for it. It just makes you look crazy, like you just said. And if he doesn't say anything, which is highly unlikely, I think that's also important, that a man, if you know that there is an issue, if you know that maybe your mum is, you know, overstepping the mark, you gotta stand up for your wife too. You know, just as much as you stand up for your mother, you need to stand up for her, because it'll breed resentment in him, and it'll breed resentment in you as well if you can't have that balance. And I think the best way to handle it, like you said, is keep your cool, try your best to communicate, you know, in private with your husband, and how you feel, or you've been wronged, without nagging him or being disrespectful, or like you said, you know, taking that time to say, I need this time away from your parents, or I need this time away from my parents, you know, I just need this time for myself, or for us to just regroup. It's very important to say that. And it's, you know, it's best if you're not in that situation, but if you are, you know, try to be patient, make dua, have someone to talk to let go of the stress, someone that you can trust, of course. I mean, the mother and daughter-in-law rivalry is an age-old stereotype. Not every relationship
for
is
good
like
reason.
that.
For good reason.
But
you're also right.
You know, there are plenty of women that do get along really well with their in-laws too, and it just depends. I was gonna say, they're always like, I always see women, or like mothers that have daughters, and I always go, you would have made a really good mother-in-law if you had a son.
Yeah.
You know, I have friends, like you know, my best friend, she's got 3 daughters, and her mum is just such a beautiful lady. And I'm
Yeah.
like, if you had a son, you know, mashallah, they would be you know, your daughter-in-law would be
Yeah.
very lucky. But you don't know how people will react in that situation, you know.
That's true. Yeah.
But we should all aim for, you know, harmony and peace, inshallah, if possible, you
Mm.
know, and especially because they are extended family. They're part of our spouse, they're part of our children's lives. It's very
Yeah.
important. But I
And
want to,
also,
yeah, please
I
go on.
sorry to interrupt. And you made a really good point in making sure that you have a very strong support network of
Yeah,
someone who understands what you're going through. That is so important. Because one of the things that people get more strong from who are abusing other people is the isolating the person. So by no means all the things that I mentioned before, do all
yeah,
of them, but also have a strong support network so you know that this is happening, this is real, and I'm not imagining it. So just have someone who's there to hold you through that experience. And that's such a powerful, powerful thing as well.
yeah,
Whether it's through group coaching, whether it's through your counselor, whether it's through
yeah.
a family member or a best friend, even your spouse. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I 100% agree. Having that support network is so important. I want to switch gears and take it back to you for a minute, sister. How do
Sure.
you, as a, you know, and a wife and a mother, balance your family responsibilities, everything that we've talked about today that is on
Mhm.
the women's shoulders? How do you balance that in this day and age with work? Many women are now also
Mhm.
working, having
Mhm.
to work. You know, a lot of the time things are so expensive. In the UK, you do
Mm.
need two
True.
incomes to make a house keep going. But for a woman, yes, she's working, but she also has all those responsibilities as well. So how do you deal with that, and how do you balance everything at home?
Yeah, so easier said than done. Easier
Yeah.
said than done. But the most important thing is wisdom, and it's something that I actually wrote about in my book, The Woke Writer. So I wrote a book called The Woke Writer. There's this section on it called Wisdom, and there are certain things that you do. So basically, just in a nutshell, wisdom is everything in its proper place. It's something that is a kind of insight that happens when you keep trying to do the right thing, and then it comes to you, and then with practice you begin to realize what the right thing to do is. I know that sounds very all over the place and very vague, but to put it very simply, make sure that like you know what your own hierarchy of needs are as a family. And we have each of our individual hierarchy of needs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the bottom is safety and shelter, right, which comes
Yeah.
in the work. What does our family need? What is the priority there? It might differ depending on what our needs are as a family. Belonging, and that kind of thing, and then going all the way up, self-actualization, and basically just remembering that it really begins with what can we do at the bottom, and then making sure that your children, your spouse is a grown adult, they're amazing, you can work it out, you can talk about it, you can keep that thread, but your children are so sensitive to your relationship with them. So when you're working, just making sure you have some quality time for them and they are a priority, and making sure that they come first, not just through your working and then one day they'll grow older and they never saw you, but doing it in a way where I want to show you how much I love you, and emotionally, and meeting those needs, listening to them when they with you, present with them. We're all guilty of not doing this. I'm guilty of
Yeah.
it. I can be in my head a lot. And then just keeping on working on it and having some kind of bonding ritual, even if it is just a few minutes a day where you sit with each other and you bond before bed. And then, yeah, I really think that the question of how to balance it all is something so unique to all of us. Of course, we have to meet our own physical needs. My needs are different to your needs. I might need some, and we'll talk about like stimulation. Like I get highly stimulated in certain environments, and sometimes I have to just switch off. And we each have our different needs. So just kind of really meeting ourselves where we are. That's the most important thing. Remembering what our values are for us and our families as well, and then just doing things in a way with wisdom and always trying to be wise and asking Allah, Rabbi zidni ilman, Rabbi zidni hikman as well. May Allah give me knowledge and also wisdom, and he he will always give us what we need, and he'll always show us when we're not quite doing what we're supposed to, and just constantly just referring back to him as a kind of guide, even that if that is waking up through the night just for 10 minutes before Fajr, at the Hajj, and that is like your link towards him. So everything has to have a kind of link, you know, your husband, yourself, your children, and first of all Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that links everything else together as well.
Inshallah. And inshallah, it's very insightful, sister, and I do hope, you know, you're doing so well. Your family are so lucky to have you, you know, mashallah. You seem to be holding everything together.
Seem to be.
But I did see a video that you did recently where you spoke about sort of the dangers of social media. There are a lot of Muslims online who probably feel the same way, especially Muslim women and girls. You know, a lot of these platforms are designed to appeal specifically to women. A lot of women are actually ending up into haram because of these platforms, because they are emulating other people on these platforms. I know you quit Instagram and TikTok. Can you share maybe why, and you know, how others can avoid the negatives that come with being on social media platforms?
Of course. So for me, I remember when I was making the decision, I was like, something has to change in the way that I'm bringing myself forward in this platform. So for me, the big thing was my energy. I'm highly sensitive. I have a certain kind of nervous system. That's why I was crying a lot when I was small. I was born this way. And it was very difficult for me to constantly feel like I had to put up something on social media to make sure I kept up with the algorithms. And it honestly, I know this sounds dramatic probably, but it felt like a toxic relationship. I was trying to keep up with the algorithm. They weren't rewarding me back. People weren't seeing this. And I was like, wait a minute. No, I'm not doing this anymore, right? I'm not going to do this. And so I made a big decision. I remember listening to a poem actually by Prince EA, which I don't really listen to him quite often, but he had a YouTube video and it was on social media. I remember listening to it and thinking, oh, wow, what if, you know, I quit social media? The thought just kind of came, and I was just toying with it. And then I thought, but I would need a platform because I'm an author. I am doing, you know, I coach people. I want people to gain some kind of value. And I do believe that that's such a powerful way to teach people through a platform. But it wasn't social media for me, because the kind of things that I wanted to teach were things which were true lessons. They were truly like, it was like research based. It was knowledge. I wanted to portray that. It was long form content. And I thought, wait, why not YouTube? And then as I looked more into YouTube, I found that they don't really do things. They do things in an algorithm, yes, but they work in a different way, where you can see videos from 3 years ago, depending on what topic you're searching for. And I was like, beautiful. So people who want to gain knowledge in a certain thing is basically they'll be on that platform, and why not? So I tried it, and now I post, Allahumma barik, alhamdulillah, been able to keep with posting one video a week, just one video. That's just what I tell myself, challenge myself with, and no more. But inshallah, who knows with time. But that basically was because it works with my energy. And now this comes back to what you were saying about the womanly cycle, and sometimes we don't even know how we feel. So I'm a planner, but I'm also a very intuitive at the same time, especially when it comes to writing my stories and books. I kind of go with the flow. But then some things I like to plan, especially when it comes to things which are I want to keep up with and continue for a long term, inshallah. So the way I do the videos is that every woman has 4 parts of her cycle naturally, if she doesn't have something like cysts or something you know, which is wrong in another way hormonally. So every woman has 4 parts of her cycle, and the first part of the cycle, I wrote about this in my book. I'll touch on it really briefly. The first part is, I won't give you the names, but the first part, you're super creative, right? Actually, I'll just call this the first part. Again, it's a cycle, it goes around. So the first part is you're super creative. The second part is you're super charismatic. You're a little bit more like the hormones, you're a little bit more aggressive, people might say as well. There's a reason for that. But then the third part is the phase, which is like your task doing, your planning. It's the longest part of the cycle. Finally, then it's the cycle which you're reflective. and you can look more into this as well. It's all to do with ovulation, luteal, all of that kind of thing, menstrual cycle. And this is the menstrual cycle. So anyway, I decided to work with my cycle, and I was like, so this is the time where I have a lot more energy. I'll just record my videos at this time, just on one day. I'll dedicate it, inshallah, bismillah, and then I'll just I'll just kind of keep consistent with it. And that way I'm not worrying about creating content. I'm just doing the doing phase and just doing things in a regular basis and just making it easy, quick, efficient, bismillah. Whereas with social media, it was like you have to be there at that moment and you have to post at this time and you have to do this. I remember my sister, Kashmir Maryam, she is on social media. She posts regularly. Allahumma barik, it's very effective. A lot of people are interested. They want to buy the books and everything. And she was like, just do it like this. Don't think about it. Don't think you're putting energy into it. And I was like, I think about everything that I do. Like I overthink and everything I put energy towards. So that doesn't work for me. But this YouTube, it does work. And a podcast, because my focus, again, it comes to values. What is your value? Not one way is right. Not one way is wrong. My value is that when I die, inshallah, I want there to be something that people are still watching and learning from, inshallah. And that's not going to be going on an Instagram algorithm. It's not on a TikTok. It's going to be gone, you know? So that was my thing. So bismillah, it was a personal choice. And I think everyone is capable of making their own. And I truly believe that you know what is good for you. And this isn't to guilt trip anyone, but subhanAllah, when we make a choice sometimes in our life, it doesn't have to be something that's right for anyone. It's right for you. And Allah will send us signs. That's actually what my book, The Woke Writer, is about. It's all about inspiration. So Allah will send us signs and he'll send us good omens, which is something we believe in as Muslims. And for me, the good omen was like a few days after, Allahu Alam, if it was a good omen. But to me, it was something that made me happy. I was listening to the Minimalist podcast and they were talking about, oh, guess what we decided to do? We quit social media. And I was like, what? The Minimalist quit social media at the same time as I did. And I was like, okay, I feel like subhanAllah was meant to do that. And it just felt so like I felt lighter about it as well. So that's really the reason why. It's a fitna. It really is a fitna, especially for brothers. I have to say brothers specifically, for sisters as well. You know, it's hard. So may Allah make it easy for you. I mean,
it definitely is. I mean, I post on it, but I actually don't go on it. So I don't do a lot of scrolling. I actually don't read a lot of comments. I'm really sorry. I don't, because I don't have time. You know, I post and I see obviously there's certain things that you can't get away from. You know, we've seen so much going on in the world for Muslims, and there's things that we do need to be important and be aware of. But I don't sit and scroll. It doesn't bring me any joy.
No,
like you said, you know, that writing when you have the 40 minutes or when your kids go to bed, I just don't find joy in doing that. That doesn't bring me anything. So yeah, I think keeping up with what's trending, what's viral, posting regularly, it can be really draining. And if it's taking away from your salah, if it's taking away from the responsibilities from your family, then fine, you know, but if it's not taken away, then that's fine. But if it is, the moment it starts to do that, then you really are too caught up in it and it's taking over your life. And social media, like you said, it can, you know, it should be treated like a fleeting thing. You should choose to engage with it for an intended positive purpose, like you're doing with your YouTube videos. But the minute it starts taking over your life, you need to let it go. And, you know, I respect and I definitely appreciate why people step away from it. I appreciate why people take time away from it, come back to it. The virtual world is not real. We're so, you know, I don't know if you've seen recently New Year's Eve things that have come up, you know, from like when 2000, when it was New Year's Eve. Obviously, it's not, it's just another day. But for people, you know, it's such a big thing on social media right now. But everybody had their phones up. And then from like, you know, 20 years ago, everybody was just like talking to each other and stuff. And you're like, the world is so different. And we need to, you know, you need to go outside and touch some grass and engage with real life people and talk to people in shops and, you know, not just live our lives in an online echo chamber, because it really can be draining. I mean, you gain weight from sitting all day online. You can just become so like hyper sensitive, like you said. You can become paranoid about what's going on. It's the social aspect goes, it's such a bad place to be. And I really respect you being open and honest about that and sharing that journey, because it is something that is really, really important.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
please.
also want to say something that you touched on, and I think it's so profound, is that it drains you. That's how it takes away from your family. It drains you. And people talk about neurotypical, neurodivergent. They talk about that a lot, right? But there's another theory which is going around, and I really do believe it's true, is that we are all neurodivergent compared to how the human mind is supposed to be working. Many years ago, and I know this is old school and going all the way back. My husband, he rolls his eyes. He's like, here we go. But it's like many years ago, we as a people, we lived by the sun, the circadian rhythm. Everything was natural. We really did go out and we touched the grass. It was, we hunted and, you know, whatever it is, what else that we did, right? I sound so ignorant, but
No, yes,
but basically, we and the rise of social media, the rise of television, blue light in the evening, it affects the way our mind has been created now. It's not typical anymore. It's different. We're all thinking differently to the way our natural fitra is calling us to. And social media is one way that it really does drain us. It drains us and it takes away our energy, our attention from our children and from our families. And that's so true as well. And one other part of this is to do with the marriage. We've been talking about harmonious homes as well. And like I said, I'm going to be releasing a video about this next week or the week after, inshallah. But it's this fantasy that is being created in female and male minds of what a woman and a man should be like. And most of the time, these things are AI, right? They're not even real. Most of the time, you look at them and you're like, wait a minute, you know, something is wrong here. But what happens is the men, they have this, and women, they have this ideal, and what they do is they'll come home, at the very least they'll compare their spouse to this person, and this person is not real, it's just a filter, literally a filter. They will not act like that, and at the very worst they will go out and they will commit something that is very dangerous and it has consequences. You know what I'm talking about, right? So they'll do that, and then these kind of relationships that are built upon this love addiction are destined, Allahu Alam, destined is probably a strong word, but they have a shelf life, because in the fantasy is an addiction, and addiction in the fantasy can only last so long, because when reality hits and you're like, hang on a minute, this person is nothing like I thought, and everything I loved about this person, my wife has the same thing, or my husband has the same thing, and now it's too late, you know, it's finished, and everything shatters. And so many people who have gone as far as doing that because of this Instagram, TikTok, or social media, anything, this image they had in their head of this person, anyone who's gone as far as that, there's always regret. There's always a reality, because reality shatters all fantasy, and the reality, if it comes to it, Allahu Alam, would be death. You know, I don't want to sound depressing or morbid, but that is something looming on all of us. So may Allah, you know, protect us and help us to see things clearly, not from these blinders that social media and so many other things have, and protect our marriages and our homes, because this is a difficult time for us and our spouses as well. And that's why you have to hold on to yourself with everything that you have in every situation we spoke about, when you're getting married, when you are dealing with toxic family members, when you are dealing with your spouse, when you're trying to bring harmony, when you're raising your children. You're going to be shook so hard. It's so important to hold on to yourself with everything you have, and that self is you can't see it right now, but it's the beautiful seed, it's the fitra inside of us, that is the nature of our soul, is the clue, is the truth, you know. So yeah, that's I don't remember, I don't think this was a question that you asked. It was
no,
we
were just we were just talking about all of, like, you know, social media, and it's so true. It is definitely true that social media has ruined so many things. I at that time when I was talking about, you know, being in postnatal depression, that, you know, you go on social media and you look at all these mums and how they're doing it, and I'm like, oh, why can't I do it? You know, it is so damaging and so toxic, and it's really good that, you know, you're, like I said, you're sharing awareness, and it's good for other people to be aware of how untrue it is. It's just a mask. Like we said, you know, you put a mask on even when you go out to the shops. Very easy to, it's even easier to put a mask on when you're on social media. You just put one video up and that's it. So it's very important to know that this is not real life.
And that's why so many exposes are happening right now. Like so many, like P. Diddy, like even people who non-Muslim, Muslim, everyone. And it's just, Allah will always show the truth, you know?
Yes.
So yeah, it's
Yes, no, definitely. Sister, like I mentioned, you're an author and a publisher. You were talking about, writing books, and you wrote books. And I also saw you did a talk at the ICNE public speaking event. So, you have a wealth of experience in your field, mashallah. Can you share maybe a wee bit more about, the books you've written, your coaching program, the publishing house that you run, that helps, female Muslim authors, and just how viewers can access all of these things? We've talked about so much, and probably there are many women that are listening that do need help and guidance, and how can they reach you to get that?
Yeah, of course. So everything is on my website, but I do have a gift for your listeners, inshallah. And this book is from my book, The Woke Writer, and it is the book on surrender. And it's not the kind of surrender where you just kind of let go. It's the kind of principles of surrender on letting go in a way that is authentic, and it helps you to see things clearly whilst following your faith as well. So I do have that gift for you, inshallah. I'm not sure if you want me to type it inside of I could type it here.
Yeah,
if you
please.
want.
Yes, please, sister, if you type it in the comments, and if you send me whatever it is, and I'll put it in the description, inshallah.
Yes, and this is basically, so this is the people, they will get inshallah an attachment to the chapter of the book, inshallah. But then you can also find out more on my website, which is aishahalam.com. And yeah, everything is there. And I'm a jack of all trades, a Jackie of all trades, as you would say, just a little bit of everything. And that's why when someone asks me, I'm like, what do you do? And I say, little bit of everything. I don't know what else to say, because it's like because I there's so many things, that I just enjoy, but I don't identify myself as any, really, so bismillah. I think we're always changing, but that's somewhere where you'll be able to see it. I do have a novel, inshallah, that is coming out soon, maybe in the next few months, inshallah. It's about, and this sounds so cliche, but it's about basically a Muslim superhero in a dystopian future, and she's a woman, and she's like very close to the earth. That's basically all I can tell you right now.
Okay, so not just therapy books and healing books, but also things to entertain us when we're at night drinking our cup of tea.
yeah, exactly, inshallah. So bismillah. So everything is on that link. So once you download the document, then you will be part of a newsletter, and then I can send you all of the information of, if you are interested in group coaching. Maybe it might not be with me, but it will be with someone who is very qualified as well, inshallah, someone who's Heal Therapy Clinic. And if you're interested in publishing a book, if you're a woman, we also want to take that on, inshallah. Submissions are going to be opening with Strange Ink, which is the name of the publishing house, and our mission is to elevate the authentic voices of Muslim women. So yeah,
inshallah. That's amazing. You are really a Jackie of all trades. Like I said, I don't know how you do so much and hold down a family and children and everything. Well, mashallah, may Allah give you much success in all your endeavors and give you loads of strength to be successful in all of your endeavors. I really do encourage everyone to go and check out Sister Aishah's website, to have a look at her books. I'm actually really interested in that book as well, inshallah. It sounds very interesting. And even other initiatives that she's on. And please go subscribe to her channel. Her videos are so informative, so helpful. You will definitely learn something from every video that Sister Aishah puts out. I definitely do. So I link all of that in the description. But sister, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for taking the time out from your family. It's honestly been really lovely talking to you. Inshallah, we can catch up again. I love talking to everybody that I do speak to, but especially to women, especially to mothers that have that similar. It's just, you just all of a sudden I don't know if you feel this, but you have this connection, you have this bond without even knowing each other. You just instantly do. I have definitely felt that today with our conversation, and I hope, inshallah, this conversation has helped so many other men and women. But yes, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and your family. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Jazakallah khair. And inshallah, we'll I'm sure we can speak, inshallah, after. I'm not sure how to do this. Where to leave?
No, I'll come. I'll take it off and then we'll have a chat.
All right. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.